Welcome back, Guardians. In the last report, we discussed the Cabal, the intricacies of the faction, and how we may be fighting them on Mars. But to get a better picture of the full story and all of our opponents, we have to take a look at one of the remaining factions, and the one most closely resembling a follower potentially serving the darkness. This faction, of course, is the Hive. The Hive are an ancient, festering evil. Their antipathy to the light transcends hatred. To the Hive, the internal struggle between light and dark is not only a war, it is a crusade. All light must be devoured so darkness can reclaim the universe. Now, that word crusade is truly something to sum up the Hive in one word. But not all crusades have been good, if any can be argued that have been good in the history of mankind. But this crusade is one of terror, of complete darkness, of brutality and horror that the Hive seem to clearly embody. These reports are designed to give you a tactical prowess, an edge on your enemies in the field of battle. And the best way to do that is, of course, to explain the hierarchy of the Hive, if a hierarchy can even be defined to the Hive. Again, with the belief structure that they seem to encompass, assigning ranks and roles to these monstrosities is very, very difficult. Regardless of that difficulty, I will do my best, undoubtedly, to explain the hierarchy to you in its various forms and shapes, and explain what you may be facing on the moon and, of course, on Earth.
There's nothing left.
Not even the light. Where's this ghost? We may want to move back.
We've woken the Hive!
Now, to start, the Thralls are the lowest ranking, if ranking can even be described to the Hive. Skin crusted in ashen gray, with claws as sharp as honed relic iron, these monsters seek to overwhelm their opponents by sheer force of brutality and speed. Fearsome creatures, definitely to the last. Feral and fearless, Thrall are a plague upon the battlefield. Their swarming, twisted frames are driven by unfettered rage. All of the terrors born of the Hive's vile will, these are the basest of them. Now, the literal definition of Thrall, the state of being in someone's power or having great power over someone, with the historical reference of the word Thrall coming from Old Norse. Now, what does that mean? It potentially means that these are beings being controlled by a Hive overlord, which we have seen in certain cases. But it also means that they could be something else, potentially reanimated organic material in the formation of a humanoid, or something else entirely. Continuing on the hierarchy structure, Acolytes. Now, it would be a mistake to view the Acolytes as foot soldiers, because the Hive is not merely an army, it is a dark force rising. It is a belief in horror, and its Acolytes are its instruments, hungry to commit the atrocities that will drive their own ascension. Under the Acolytes acting as an intermediary force, the Hive are able to push past and dominate many worlds and systems beyond that of our home system, the Soul. But a disturbing factor still remains, that the Hive is not a simple sadistic military, but a potential belief, an ideal representation of what the darkness could be. Next we have the Knights, a roaring, striding fortress. The Knight is the Hive's foremost and most zealous defender. Centuries of battle have toughened the bony protrusions on its body into an armor as hard as relic iron, a defense only strengthened by the Hive magic that Knights use to summon shields of burning force. Knights are the embodiment of corruption as the Hive continues to impose its forces upon us. Knights are found carrying cleavers. Cleavers are, of course, carved, fossilized bone of hellforged metal, dulled by centuries of slaughter and execution. They also have seen to be carrying Hive boomers and have the ability to wield some magics more commonly found amongst the wizards of their ranks. Describing the wizards can be difficult, but in our reports and ghost fragments, they are females. The wizard is the scalpel with which the Hive vivisect the universe, a nightmare of rag and bone. The wizard conceals herself within darkness and fire, dissecting and experimenting on anything that falls into her clutches. Whether or not we know if any of the other Hive in the hierarchy structure share some sort of sex resemblance or perhaps difference between male and female is unknown, but we do know for a fact that the wizards seem to be very female, which is interesting. But of course, that does not define everything that they are. Finally, we have the Ogres. Now, the Ogres are charged with Hive sorcery. Ogres are abomination of flesh and rage, unleashed from the deepest Hive tunnels as engines of destruction. Apocryphal lore suggests that ogres undergo terrible transformations as they grow, agonizing rituals that gift them with the might and cunning that they seem to possess. Our encounters on the moon have led us to battle with some of the unborn ogres. Now, these unborn have yet to be given the honor of a summoning. They're brute enforcers with a singular hunger for destruction. The unborn serve the will of a greater Hive overlord. These ogres that display loyalty and strength will be called upon for an agonizing ritual that earns them the title of Reborn. So in our initial definitions of the Hive, we can see they seem to occupy some sort of magic, some ability to transform information and technology into something beyond a sorcery, if you will, undefinable by us because its science, if there is any science in it, is, well, not reachable at this current time. One thing seems to be very certain about the Hive is that they are a force of corruption and darkness that seems to encompass large portions of the moon, if not all of the moon, and a grand portion of the earth. But we still don't know their exact objectives, and hopefully with a bit more information we will know in the future. But what we do know is something very, very interesting about their corruption and how it can take a hold of certain guardians. Now, this corruption taking a hold of guardians is unsatisfying at best, shameful even, but it is without a doubt a destructive force that must be recognized by us if we are in any hopes to defeat the Hive and what they represent. The story particularly speaks of Dredgen Yor. He was the creator of the Thorn, a weaponry of exotic design found on some guardians here and there in this city. It is a weapon of unredeemable power, but it does have a backstory, and its information can spell reason in why Yor fell and how we can prevent it. The nobleman stood, and the people looked to him, for he was a beacon, hope given form, yet still only a man. And within that truth there was great promise. If one man could stand against the night, then so too could anyone, everyone. When the man journeyed on, the people remembered. In his wake, hope spread, but the man had a secret fear. His thoughts were dark, a sadness crept from the depths of his being. He had been a hero for so long, but pride had led him down sorrow's road. Slowly the shadow's whispers became a voice, a dark call, offering glories enough to make even the brightest light wander. He knew he was fading, yet he still yearned. On his last day, he sat and watched the sun fall, his final thoughts, pure of mind if not body, held to a fleeting hope. Though they would suffer for the man he would become, the people would remember him as he had been. And so the nobleman himself, beneath a darkness no flesh should touch, and gave up his mortal self to claim a new birthright. Whether this was a choice or destiny is a truth known only to fate. In that cool evening air, as dusk was devoured by night, the nobleman ceased to exist. In his place, another stood. Same meat, same bone, but so very different. The first and only of his family, the sole forebearer and the last descendant of the name Yor. In his first moments as a new being, he looked down at his rose and realized for the first time that it had no petals, only the jagged purpose of angry thorns. Now, the story of Yor is less so of a tale, but more so as a literary device used to explain to guardians the potential urges that darkness may even creep up in all of us. We are not perfect beings of light. We do have urges and sometimes desires, however perverse they may be, to seek greater glories, sometimes at any cost. The story of Yor is telling, but it is a literary device at best. It is used to tell us that perversion, that pride, these are the things of darkness, ultimately twisting us to becoming something different. But your story is potentially the best way to sum up the Hive story. With a little bit of speculation, we can assume that the Hive may have been something prior to their corruption, something better, something full of light, but turned perverse at one point in their people's potential history. But our war with the Hive hasn't been without mistakes. Years ago, we attempted to retake the moon, our birthright, the birthright of humanity and those who have come with humanity. But we failed utterly and disastrously, costing the lives of many brave individuals and many, many guardians. But to get a better context of our history, we have to go back further into the ages of our people, mainly the Golden Age, the Dark Age, and the current age we live in, the City Age. More in my next report.